He wasn't an employee. He wasn't on the payroll. He drove to a live event because a YouTube channel meant that much to him, and he never came home. His name was Robert Blake, and if you've followed Matt's off-road recovery long enough, you already feel something when you hear it. Robert wasn't the star of the channel, wasn't behind the camera, wasn't on the crew manifest in any official capacity. He was something harder to explain and, it turns out, much harder to replace. The kind of person that every community quietly depends on without fully realizing it until they're gone. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why his story changes the way you think about this channel. Not just about what happened that day in southern Utah, but about what Matt built, who it attracted, and what it means when a community loses someone who gave absolutely everything to be part of it. The story of Matt's off-road recovery starts the way most genuinely good stories do, with someone doing something they love, completely unaware that anyone else is watching. Matt Wetzel grew up in Washington County, Utah, part of a big family, on the kind of land that teaches you things schools don't. Before he was a YouTube creator, he was a roofer. 12 years of it, 10 as an employee, 2 as a co-owner after he and a partner launched Skyline Roofing. He was good at it, but his heart wasn't in it. And Matt Wetzel is the kind of man who notices when his heart isn't in something. He sold his share in the roofing company and did what very few people in their late 30s would have the nerve to do. He bought the assets of a small, struggling towing operation with no professional towing experience at all. He named it Red Ryder Towing. He learned as he went. Then in 2013, he bought Winder Towing, a company with a 30-year reputation in Hurricane, Utah, founded by Harlan Winder back in 1981, and he built it into something the town knew and trusted. What most people don't know is that before any of this became a YouTube channel, Matt started posting to Facebook, not videos, photos, pictures of his off-road recovery work in the canyon country around southern Utah. He noticed almost immediately that those photos, the ones of mud-buried Jeeps, overturned side-by-sides, tourists stuck in places they had no business going, got dramatically more engagement than anything else he posted. His friends and family kept telling him the same thing. You need to put this on YouTube. He spent nearly a year researching it. That detail matters. Matt didn't stumble into this. He studied the platform, studied the audience, and when he was ready, he launched on March 28, 2019. His first video was 53 seconds long. He shot it on an iPhone. No production team, no script, no budget. Just a guy, a yellow modified Jeep Cherokee he called the Banana, a few dogs, and the most photogenic terrain in the American West. Within 3.5 years, the channel had nearly 1.5 million subscribers. Today it's approaching 2 million, with well over 630 million views. And here's what the comments kept asking. And here's the answer they never got, until now. The numbers are impressive, but numbers alone don't explain what happened with MOR, because plenty of channels have numbers. What Matt built was something different, and you see it clearly when you look at why the channel grew the way it did. The format is simple on the surface. Each video follows a 3-part rhythm that the audience came to recognize and depend on. First, the call. Matt picks up the phone. Someone is stuck. The location and the situation are explained. Second, the drive. Fast motion, the crew loading up, the dogs running alongside the rigs across open Utah desert. Third, the recovery itself, the diagnosis, the problem solving, the rescue. That's it. That's the formula. And it worked at a scale that networks with million-dollar production budgets couldn't replicate, because what Matt was selling wasn't entertainment. It was authenticity. He turned down the Discovery Channel. He turned down the History Channel, more than once. Both networks sent scouts. Both offers came with significant financial upside. Matt said no to all of it, because he understood, clearly and without sentimentality, that the moment a network got involved, the thing that made the channel work would die. Creative control wasn't a negotiating position for him. It was the product. The crew that formed around MOR reflected that same ethos, his wife Jamie, his sons, an employee named Ed, who became one of the most beloved figures in the comments, a woman named Lizzie Ballard, daughter of Matt's oldest friend, who turned out to be a gifted fabricator and on-camera presence. Each person on that channel was there because of genuine connection, not casting, and the audience matched the channel. MOR fans didn't just watch, they donated. They drove to Hurricane, Utah on vacation specifically to visit the shop. They showed up at events. They organized GoFundMe campaigns for strangers in the MOR community who needed help. Matt's off-road recovery raised over $600,000 for local charities. Over $100,000 of that went toward building an all-abilities park in Hurricane, Money raised almost entirely through merchandise sales and direct donations from the audience. That was the community Robert Blake found when he discovered this channel. And that community is the reason he drove to Sand Hollow State Park in March of 2023. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. To understand what happened at the Off-Road Record Games, you need to understand who Robert Blake was before he ever watched a single MORA video. He was born Robert Joseph Blake Jr. on October 29, 1969, in Meadville, Pennsylvania. He was an Eagle Scout. He graduated from Meadville Area High School and then did something that tells you everything about his character. He joined the U.S. Navy. 4 years of service. Then, because 4 years apparently wasn't enough, he came home and joined the Utah Army National Guard. 18 years in the National Guard. Let that number land. 18 years. During that time, he deployed to Kuwait, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. He was part of Operation Enduring Freedom and the global war on terrorism. When his service was over, he had received multiple commendations, including the Bronze Star Medal, one of the United States military's highest honors, awarded for acts of heroism and meritorious service in combat. When he wasn't deployed, he was at home in West Jordan, Utah, working full-time at Hill Air Force Base. He married Paige Leanne Bogue Poulsen in April of 2011. Together they had a blended family with 6 children and a large group of grandchildren. People who knew him described a man who ran the BBQ at every family gathering and made sure everyone else had food on their plate before he would eat. A man who, if he didn't know how to do something, sat down and learned it until he did. He was 53 years old in March of 2023 when he drove to Sand Hollow State Park. He wasn't there to compete. He wasn't there as media. He came as a volunteer, specifically to help with spectator safety at the first ever Off-Road Record Games. One phone call, one conversation. That's all it took to change the direction of everything. The Off-Road Record Games was Matt's most ambitious project to that point. It took the MOR universe, the fans, the partner channels, the spirit of the whole thing, and turned it into a 3-day live event. The concept was straightforward and completely absurd in the best possible way. 5 of YouTube's most well-known off-road recovery operators would compete against each other for a completely meaningless but deeply coveted title, World's Greatest Off-Road Wrecker. Each competitor brought a purpose-built machine, half rock crawler, half tow vehicle, all obsession. Matt brought his own rig. He was joined by competitors from BSF Recovery, Trailmater, Fab Rats, and Merlin's Old School Garage. The event was held at Sand Hollow State Park in Hurricane, Utah, from March 9th through March 11th, 2023. In total, over 6,000 people attended. Parking overflowed onto the highway. People came from multiple states. It was a sellout. The competitions included dead pulls, dragging a full-size loaded pickup truck across a sandy beach, rollover recovery, a flex competition to test suspension travel, welding skills tests, and the centerpiece event, a grueling trail race up the 777, one of the most technically demanding routes in the area, pulling disabled vehicles through alternating sand and rock terrain. Robert Blake was part of the crew that made it happen, not in a headline role. In the role that actually keeps an event like this functioning safely, crowd management, spectator positioning, making sure that 6,000 excited people watching 10,000-pound machines crawl up rock faces stayed where they were supposed to stay. It was, by every account, exactly the kind of job Robert was built for. Structured, service-oriented, requiring the kind of calm, organized presence that 22 years of military experience produces in a person. On the second day of the event, March 10th, Robert Blake suffered a cardiac event. He was 53 years old. He died doing what he loved. His obituary uses those exact words. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. The MOR community mobilized within hours. Multiple GoFundMe campaigns launched simultaneously. Matt's own videos from that week, the ones covering the record games themselves, were uploaded with direct links to the fundraising pages for Robert's family. Fellow creators Robbie Layton, Bleepin' Jeep, and others included those links in their own record games coverage. The support wasn't coordinated in any formal way. It happened because the people in this community knew what to do when one of their own needed help. Robert's obituary, published in the Salt Lake Tribune on March 16, 2023, drew condolences from people who had only briefly met him, fellow volunteers, families who had encountered him at the MOR shop, strangers who knew him from a handshake and a conversation, and remembered it clearly enough to write about it months later. One couple from Idaho wrote that they had met Robert and his wife Paige just days before the event, that they had invited the couple to the games themselves, and that the news had left them shocked. Another person wrote that they had been a volunteer alongside him at the event, that he was a great leader and the great guy who wanted to make sure all was taken care of. That last line is the one worth sitting with, not because it's unusual for people to be kind in an obituary, but because it describes, with complete precision, the thing that Robert Blake was doing at that event, and the thing that no channel algorithm, no content strategy, and no subscriber count can produce or replicate. A person who shows up to make sure everyone else is taken care of. Matt's channel had raised $600,000 for strangers. It had built an all-abilities park. It had turned down network television deals to stay true to a community. And that community had produced Robert Blake. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. Here's what gets overlooked every time this story is discussed online, and it matters. Robert Blake was not a casual fan who happened to attend an event. His obituary describes a man who had met the MOR crew through the shop in Hurricane, who had been in personal contact with Matt and his team, who had built a real relationship with the people behind the channel. He invited strangers he met at a gas station to attend the Wrecker Games. He was personally welcoming people and advocating for the event in the weeks before it happened. That level of engagement isn't fandom, it's membership. And it reflects something specific about what Matt built, something that's been written about and talked about in the YouTube creator space, but rarely explained clearly. Matt's channel didn't just build an audience, it built a culture. One that replicated his own values back at him. Be useful, show up, help people, ask for nothing in return if you can afford not to. Robert Joseph Blake Jr. had spent 22 years in military service. He had a Bronze Star Medal. He worked at Hill Air Force Base. He was not a man who lacked for purpose or identity. He chose to give his free time to the MOR community because something about it spoke to values he already had. Service, community. The idea that showing up and doing your job well matters, even when, especially when, nobody's watching. He was 53. He had grandchildren. He could have been anywhere that weekend. He was exactly where he wanted to be. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. The Wrecker Games did not end with the 2023 event. In 2024, Matt held a second edition at Sand Hollow. The event expanded, 14 YouTube creators partnering with 14 off-road operators, competing across one of the most demanding looped courses ever built at the park. Giveaways worth up to $50,000. A portion of ticket sales donated to the Utah Public Lands Alliance. A larger footprint, a larger crowd, the same spirit. In 2025, the games ran again. Each event carries acknowledgement of what the first one cost. The GoFundMe links that Matt posted in his 2023 Wrecker Games videos have never quietly disappeared from the internet. The MOR community's response to Robert's death, the speed of it, the breadth of it, the way creators across the off-road space mobilized without being asked, became part of the channel's history in a way that no announcement could have accomplished. And the channel itself continued doing what it was built to do. Matt kept filming recoveries. He kept turning down network offers. His wife Jamie kept appearing. The dogs kept running. Ed kept smiling. New crew members cycled through. The Banana kept getting upgraded and modified and pushed past what anyone thought a 2001 Jeep Cherokee was capable of doing. The channel now has a dedicated mobile app, a merchandise store that runs giveaways and member events, a community infrastructure that Robert Blake would recognize because it's built on exactly the kind of give-before-you-take energy he himself embodied. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. The channel isn't the same because it can't be. A community that produces people like Robert Blake and then loses them in the act of showing up is permanently changed by that. Not crippled, changed. There's a version of this story that treats Robert Blake as a footnote, a tragedy that happened at an event, a sad moment in an otherwise positive channel history. That's not what this is. Robert Blake wasn't a footnote, he was the thesis. Matt Wetzel built something that people talk about in YouTube creator circles as a case study in authenticity. How do you build a channel with nearly 2 million subscribers starting from nothing? You film real work on an iPhone. You hire people because of who they are, not how they look on camera. You say no to the networks that want to sand down everything rough and real about what you do. You raise money for your community before anyone asks you to. You help the person in the canyon, even if they can't pay. And when you do all of that consistently, for years, you attract people who live by the same code. Robert Blake served in combat zones. He worked a federal job. He had a family and grandchildren, and a full life completely independent of anything YouTube. He didn't need MAR to give him purpose. What he found in that community was recognition, A group of people who understood that showing up and helping is its own reward, that the person who makes sure everyone else is fed before sitting down is the one worth knowing. He drove to Sand Hollow State Park in March of 2023 to help keep strangers safe at an event that mattered to him. He was exactly where he chose to be. The channel will grow. The games will run every year. New crew members will build custom rigs, get stuck in deep sand, and pull each other out. The MOAir community will keep donating and showing up and doing the kinds of things that make people write condolences for a stranger they only met once at an event in southern Utah. But every time the Wrecker Games happen, every time Matt's community rallies around someone who needs help, every time a GoFundMe goes up and gets funded within hours, Robert Blake is part of why that happens. He didn't build the culture, but he lived it so completely that when the community needed proof of what it stood for, he was the evidence. What you just watched isn't really a story about a YouTube channel. It's a story about what happens when a person builds something that reflects the best version of who they are, and then attracts people who are already living that way. Matt's off-road recovery keeps growing. The annual games keep running. The community Matt built in Hurricane, Utah continues to do the kind of work that rarely shows up in subscriber counts or view metrics, funding parks, showing up for strangers, treating every recovery as if the person on the other end of the phone matters. Robert Blake knew that. He bet a weekend on it. Here's the question worth sitting with. Do you think the kind of community Matt built, one that would produce someone like Robert Blake, is something that can be replicated? Or is it something that only happens once, when the right person builds the right thing in the right place and refuses to sell it to anyone? Tell me what you think in the comments.